This video essay will be focused on discussing LGBTQ representation in popular media with a focus on Schitt's Creek. As a preface, much of the theory discussed in this video will be based on the textbook Sexual Identities and the Media, an Introduction. Representations of these groups has exploded since the 90s. Now, more than ever, you're more likely to find queer characters on TV. And this is significant because for many people, gay and straight alike, the media is the first point of contact with the LGBTQ community. For queer viewers, it acts as validation and helps to make them more aware of their own identities and establish sexuality as a spectrum that they can relate to. For straight viewers, it serves as a reminder that there exists a world outside of heterosexuality, even if it's not immediately obvious in their everyday lives. With that in mind, if you look at various gay characters in the media, you'll find some patterns. Usually, their main character trait is their sexuality. If you ask a viewer about Kurt on Glee, for example, they'll probably tell you, "Oh, you mean the gay kid?" Same thing applies with Mitch and Cam on Modern Family. They're the gay couple. They deal with being gay in a heteronormative world, and that is where a lot of their conflict in that show stems from. And in the words of the great Jerry Seinfeld,
not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
This is where queer theory gets complicated. The question, what is the best way to portray the LGBTQ community in media, has no right answer. If your primary focus is tackling specific issues, such as coming out, then Kurt from Glee is a great example. If your goal is to portray quote-unquote normal family, then Mitch and Cam have got you covered. But if you want to derail stereotypes about gay people, for example, you might take issue in all of these characters as they all kind of fit the sissy stereotype, or the portrayal of the gay man as overly emotional, vain, and unathletic. But stereotype analysis itself is heavily criticized within the pop culture critical community for being too black and white and assuming that assimilation into heteronormative culture is the ultimate goal, as well as subjecting queer representation to patriarchal constructs based on heteronormativity. In short, it's too complicated to do justice in this video, and I am not nearly authoritative enough in the subject to tell people what to think. So I encourage you to check out my sources and read there if you want a deeper understanding of these different lenses on stereotypes. So with all of that in mind, Schitt's Creek serves as a unique portrayal of LGBTQ people. To briefly summarize, Schitt's Creek is a sitcom created by Eugene and Dan Levy about a wealthy, cosmopolitan family that loses everything and is forced to live in a motel in a tiny town called Schitt's Creek. The family consisting of a father, portrayed by Eugene Levy, the son, portrayed by Daniel Levy, the daughter, portrayed by Annie Murphy, and the mother, portrayed by Catherine O'Hara, are thrust into this humble little town, and their pretentious, oftentimes spoiled views of the world clash with the contrasting ruralness of the town. The focus of this essay is going to be David, who is the son, portrayed by Dan Levy, who himself is gay, and this character, David, is pansexual. Now, don't be embarrassed if you don't know what that means. Even Larry King didn't know.
You play someone who is pansexual.
Yes.
What is that? I've never heard it, the term.
Pansexuality is an attraction or love to anyone of any sex or gender identity.
Now, unlike the previous examples, David's sexuality is not at the forefront of his character. In fact, it is not even discussed until 10 episodes into the first season. Check out this scene where David comes out to the audience. For context, he is talking to his friend Stevie, who he just slept with.
Okay, cool. I only drink red wine.
Okay.
And up until last night, I was under the impression that you too only drank red wine. But I guess I was wrong.
I see where you're going with this. I do drink red wine. But I also drink white wine. And I've been known to sample the occasional rosé. And a couple summers back, I tried a Merlot that used to be a Chardonnay, which got a bit complicated.
Okay, yeah, so you're just really open to all wines.
I like the wine and not the label. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
This is notable not just for its brilliant use of euphemisms, but for the casual way David's sexuality is discussed. David is more preoccupied with getting wine than coming out to Stevie. The only reason it's discussed is because they slept together and Stevie was worried about how that might affect David, who she assumed was gay. His sexuality is discussed because Stevie was concerned about her friend, things got clarified, and it is never again presented as an issue, only as a fact. David's character does not become conflated with his sexuality. Because of his acceptance, his friend and partner's acceptance, it simply becomes as much of a trait as the straight character's straightness is to them. This differs from most characters being defined by their gayness and constantly encountering conflict as a result of their sexuality. Again,
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
David simply represents a newer, more casual view of sexuality in the world that I believe we as a society are trying to strive for. The next clip is how David's family deals with his sexuality.
David?
Jake, this is my mother.
David's mom is surprised to find a naked man in her home, as anyone would be, and as any mother would, all she asks is to be introduced to David's friend.
David, stop acting like a disgruntled pelican. I came home from lunch because I realized I misplaced my portfolio.
So we're gonna look for it.
David,
oh
looking
my
for your
God.
mother's portfolio. Oh, okay. Hello, Johnny Rose. You are...
Jake.
Yes, welcome, Jake. I see David's made you feel right at home. Okay.
Enter Dad. Cue a classic dad reaction. No underlying disgust, just pure, unadulterated awkwardness.
So much.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Alexis, this is Jake. We seem to have caught the boys in
An afternoon delight. Is that term still a going
that's-
thing?
Oh, never say that again.
Don't do that.
And it wraps up with a beautiful sibling tag team against a dad who is trying too hard to be hip. This scene shows the unique power of David's family's acceptance of his sexuality. It's easy to see this exact scene play out with a girl coming out of the bathroom or with David and his sister swapping places. His sexuality is not the core conflict, nor does it interfere with the expected family dynamic. David gets to be embarrassed by his family, just like everybody else. For the sake of hammering the point home, I will leave you with Dan Levy discussing this dynamic with Larry King.
What do his parents on the show think of that?
They're completely open to it, and that to us was the most important choice that we could have made as a narrative. I feel like we didn't want lessons to be learned. This was a family that was very accepting of who this kid is, and it's been amazing to see the feedback from that. And you you don't think about it at the time because I live in a pretty progressive world here, but there are families that people who had come up to me on the street and said the way that the parents on the show have so accepted their son, no questions asked, informed their family on how to go about handling, a child who is, in that case, was gay.
We're not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
I mean, it's fine if that's who you are.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have many gay friends.
My father's gay.
Look,
Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned a thing or two.
All right, look, you want to have sex right now? Do you want to have sex with me right now? Let's go.